So my idea of a good time is spending time with book people. And if you feel the same way, I hope to see you on Thursday, April 27th through to Saturday, April 29th at the Epigraph Literary Festival. It's a free virtual event that's all about books, the joy of reading, and the literary lifestyle. We also have an amazing author lineup, some great speakers, and fun sessions. So visit epigraphlitfest.com to register for this fun virtual festival. That's epigraphlitfest.com to get your free tickets. Plus, early birds get first dibs on event swag. So go to epigraphlitfest.com to register, and I hope to see you there. Hello, I'm Victoria from Biblio Lifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. Today on the couch, I'm so excited to welcome author Claire Jiménez, and we talk about her debut novel, What Happened to Ruthy Ramirez. In the novel, a Puerto Rican Staten Island family deals with the disappearance of 13-year-old Ruthy, and we see what happens when they discover she is potentially alive and on a reality TV show. Claire also talks about her writing and reading life, gives us book and bookstore recommendations, plus lots more. So let's get into the episode because I can't wait for you to listen to my chat with author Claire Jiménez. Have you downloaded your free copy of the Biblio Lifestyle 2023 Spring Reading Guide? It's a free downloadable PDF guide that shares some of the best new books of the season, along with a list of fun things to do, spring-themed recipes, and tips to help improve your reading life. So visit springreadingguide.com to download your free copy of the 2023 Spring Reading Guide. That's springreadingguide.com for your free copy of the 2023 Spring Reading Guide. Now, on to the episode. Hi readers, welcome again to the Reader's Couch. I'm your host, Victoria Wood, and here on the couch with me to talk about her debut novel, What Happened to Ruthy Ramirez, is author Claire Jiménez. Hi Claire, welcome to the Reader's Couch.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, I'm super excited to have you here. Your book was an absolute page turner for me, so just really excited to have you here. Can't wait to talk about Ruthy Ramirez. But before we get there, your debut, I know you've published a collection of stories before, but this is your debut novel. How are you feeling? How excited are you?
Oh man, I've worked for so long on this novel, so for it to be coming out soon, and I've already seen people have been sending me pictures of seeing it out in the world, so that's been exciting. But it's also been like a little bit nerve-wracking. So but that's all natural. So
absolutely excited with a bit of nerves, but yeah. I think the novel was just excellent, but I really want readers to hear it from you. Tell us about your novel, What Happened to Ruthy Ramirez, and what can readers expect when they pick up your book?
Yeah, sure. So What Happened to Ruthy Ramirez is about a young 13-year-old Puerto Rican girl from Staten Island who goes missing in 1996. And her name is Ruthy, and 12 years later, her sisters are watching a reality TV show, and there's a woman who looks remarkably similar. And so they set out to find her. But really, it's an exploration of grief and trauma that also, has elements of humor inside of it. Because I find that, especially with Puerto Ricans, we use humor to survive.
This novel is set in Staten Island. It's in the 90s. Tell me about the setting for this novel, because I love everything 90s, the late 90s to early aughts. That was kind of my coming of age. So
yeah,
anytime I kind of get those, pop culture references and just all that good stuff, which the novel is infused with as well. So tell me about the time and setting and your choice for using that in the novel.
Yeah, so I grew up in the 90s. So, and of course, wherever we come of age, that's where we kind of get obsessed with. And so I returned back to the 90s often. And so I knew that I wanted for Ruthie to go missing inside of that decade. And I really, thought a lot about the music and the politics and the things that were happening at that moment. And then I also wanted to, so it also flashes forward to 2008. And so basically in 2008, there's the crash, right? There's the Great Recession. Obama's elected, and I was really interested in that tension between hope and despair, which I think is something that the Ramirez family struggles with as well. And so, in terms of setting, I was really thinking about those two time periods, because often we think of setting as place, but it also consists of time. And in terms of place, I was interested in Staten Island. I grew up in Staten Island. It's often like it's not, it's like the stepchild of New York. It's not often written about. So, um, I definitely knew that I wanted to play around with writing inside that borough and think about the Staten Island Mall, for example, as a site. The North Shore, which is very underwritten about. Um, I think often when people think of Staten Island, they think of the longstanding Italian and Irish communities. But there are a lot of different types of communities living in the island. There's Sri Lankans, Liberians, Puerto Ricans, African American, Mexican. There's so many different uh, cultures inside of the North Shore that don't get written about or represented at all.
Right, right, absolutely. Okay, I really want us to get into the characters in the novel a bit. The book revolves around the Ramirez family. Like you mentioned, Ruthie goes missing. This happens in 1996. She was 13 years old, but she also has a family. So there is her mother, Dolores. She has a sister, Nina,
Mhm.
and the eldest is Jessica. So I want us to first talk about Ruby's mother, Dolores. Dolores was quite an interesting character for me, because I don't want to say she kind of reminded me of my mother in a way, but she kind of did, which is like this
Yeah,
perfect mix of, in this case, Ruthie's mom is Dolores is very religious to some degree, but it's
yeah,
like a different kind of religion, but I loved it at the
yeah,
same
yeah,
time. The way she approaches religion, let me say that. The way
yeah.
she approaches it might not be conventional, but I appreciated it. And, she's obviously going through grief. She has a lot of guilt, she has fear, she has resentment, she has all these different things going on. But I want to hear from you. Tell us about Dolores and just who she is in this novel.
Yeah, with Dolores, I wanted some. I love Dolores because I love that in the same breath she's praying to God and then she's cursing out,
Yes.
somebody at the supermarket, and that for me, I wanted that sort of profane prayer.
Hmm.
That for me felt that would be the natural way in which Dolores would approach a world in which her daughter went missing. It's also very familiar. There's a lot of women in my life who who will curse one moment and then go to church the next. And
Same.
I wanted to represent that. I didn't want it to be, I think that a lot of times, especially with Puerto Ricans and especially with Puerto Rican old women, there is this like trope that gets played out of like the
Hmm.
very like, religious and, so, but like in a way that's submissive,
Hmm.
and the submissive older religious woman. And in my experience, that has never been the truth of of the elderly woman, especially in my family, or the elderly Puerto Rican woman I know
Hmm.
inside of my communities. And so I wanted to uh, represent Dolores in all of her messy glory. It was also a difficult perspective for me to write, because to I really had to ask myself, what is it like for a mother to lose her child, and what type of life can she imagine after that? And so that question it constantly hung over the novel when I was writing her perspective.
Right, right, absolutely. I mean, that's something I just couldn't imagine myself, but for a moment I had that experience through Dolores, but I personally loved her as a character. I dare say I think she was my favorite.
I love that. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
All right, let's get into the sisters though. So there are two sisters in this novel. So we have Nina. She's the youngest, and Nina was quite interesting to me. I'm
Uh-huh.
one of two. I don't have three siblings. I'm one of two. So my younger sister, I kind of got that kind of energy from Nina. When I was
Uh-huh.
reading about Nina, I was thinking about my sister. So Nina, she's the youngest. She's a recent college grad, but she has like limited job options out there. But she comes back to Staten Island and she's working in retail. Her boss is just, yeah, he's an a-hole. There's nothing else to say about that. Tell me about Jessica and what what she's going through in the novel. I mean, leaving college, coming back home, there's that dynamic, working
Right.
a retail job. Tell us about Jessica.
About Jessica. Okay, so
I'm sorry. Tell us about Nina.
yeah, Nina, I mean, it's interesting because I actually enjoy that slippage because I feel like sometimes there's overlaps in
Hmm.
what they're dealing with, you know, because a lot of the novel and inside their perspective takes place, at their work, which I think is true for working class people. Like a lot of the lives are inside of our jobs, and so for Nina, I think that she graduates into the Great Recession, and obviously the unemployment rate at that moment had increased, and it was the opportunities available were very limited. But what I wanted to explore there is, you have, especially when thinking about a Puerto Rican family that has been displaced and moved to the diaspora, at least Dolores, the mother, right, and
Hmm.
who's raised her daughters to think, like, you do all the right things, you'll get a nice job, all of this good stuff, right? And so what happens when you do all of the right things and it doesn't work, right? What happens when you go to college and you can't find a great job, right? And then the idea of the American dream, it really kind of falls apart. At the same time, thinking about comparing that to the loss of Ruthie, right?
Yeah.
How does that dream for the mother's dream fall apart? And so I really was looking through Nina's perspective, as an opportunity to explore those questions. Um, and yeah, she's very much baby sister, very much baby sister.
Very much baby sister energy. I'm telling you, I thought of
Yeah.
my own sister. All right, next sister is Jessica. Now, she's the eldest. She works as a nurse and she just has a lot on her shoulders. Jessica is hiding a lot of secrets. I think that's all I'll say. And we see that come to light. But Jessica, I think she had a lot of burden. She was carrying a lot of burden. And I think it has to do with being the eldest sibling sometimes. And I'm the eldest child. And
I am too.
right. And there's certain responsibilities, and I see this across cultures.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of burden. And I felt Jessica, carrying that burden. There's just a lot of expectation, placed on her. And some are placed on her by herself, like she did it. So I'm really curious about Jessica, and, you writing her and now hearing you're an eldest sibling too. That's really interesting.
Somebody on Twitter had posted, uh, somebody on Twitter had posted, I think it was last year or 2 years ago. They were saying that older sisters need a union,
Yes.
And I thought about the amount of caretaking, right,
Hmm.
that older sisters often have to deal with, but because being a woman and being the oldest, you're often in charge of not only like chores but also diffusing arguments and approaching the difficult topics. And so with Jessica, she was taking care of her mother for a while, right? And then she has her own baby, and then she calls Nina and she says, I can't do this anymore, I need help, I'm exhausted, and so really I wanted to, for Jessica, I wanted to start as I was writing her character, I was constantly thinking about that sense of exhaustion, but also that sense of guilt and responsibility. Well, I feel like Nina was the one who kind of wanted to deflect and push it off and not think about it. I think Jessica was constantly carried this overwhelming weight of that loss, and also those questions about what could I have done.
Absolutely, absolutely. And she starts to question if someone who did something really bad to her probably encountered Ruthy, sorry, as well. So there's a lot there for Jessica to unpack. And again, I encourage folks to pick up a copy of What Happened to Ruthy Ramirez so they can dig into that as well. I'm curious though, and I think I kind of gathered as much from our conversation so far, but what really inspired you to tell this story? I mean, you came of age in the 90s, you're from Staten Island, you wanted to give voice to this community that is often not written about for sure. But outside of, those factors that kind of brought you back home on paper, but what made you decide I'm the person to tell this story and I need to tell it now?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's not even necessarily that like I was like I am the person to tell it, but more like that it was just naturally the thing that was on my mind, at the some I forget who says it, that writers can only write what they can write, right? You try to
Yep.
write like I think about like I've said this before. I love James Baldwin, right? He's one of these
Yeah.
writers that I've always looked up to, and I think when I began writing wanted to write like James Baldwin, and then realized that I can't write like James Baldwin because I'm not James Baldwin. I am Claire Jiménez. And so the things that I'm writing about were things that were on my mind. I started this novel 10 years ago. It was a short story. And I was thinking about working retail and reality television and femicide and the ways in which, Black and brown women are missing, literally, right? But also figuratively from representations in pop culture, in the news, in our books, right? How are we distorted? How do we become targets of violence in real life and in entertainment, right? On this TV show, in the book, uh, we constantly watch these women fight, like, and
Yep.
fight each other until they get kicked off the show. And in real life, there's a lot of reality TV where the bodies of Black and brown women are these sites of violence, right? And and I'm guilty of watching this TV too, right? And I
Yeah.
kind of was going through this question when I was writing it, like, why am I watching this, right? Like, what is this? What is this? And why is this the only representation of myself available on TV? And what are the real instances of violence against women inside of my community, right? And so all of those things I started to weave together.
Absolutely. And I mean, that makes sense. And even today, in today's reality TV, because I was thinking about reality TV in its infancy, and the representation was very stark. It was non existent. And when it was there, it was always in a negative light. And
Right.
other cast members just never had that burden. And it's still kind of happening today because the representation was never there. And now they're trying. And it's just, there's a lot of negative things happening at the same
Mhm.
time. And I just don't think they're equipped to handle it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's often I think about some of these shows. I'm like, how are people not getting sued?
Yeah,
What is happening? But yeah, yeah. So I those all of those themes
played in the book.
coming together. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really curious about your writing life, Claire. How long did it take for you to write Ruthy Ramirez? And, what was kind of your writing process like?
Oh man, it took me 10 years. Like I said, I had started off writing it as a short story when I was in my MFA at Vanderbilt in Nashville. And so, I mean, my writing process or practice has changed a lot over the last decade. I went from, in my early 20s just writing writing when I felt something, or I felt overwhelmed by emotion, right? And then getting into an MFA program and learning to build a practice and be a little bit more disciplined and intentional about it. Then after the MFA, I ended up with this story that was kind of a big story. It was 30 pages long. It was a little fat. And we were working through it to try to, figure out like, oh, okay, so what, I remember in workshop just thinking, hearing like, oh, well, maybe we can, shave this off or do that. But always I came back to like, I wanted to keep all of these different pieces. And I kept on working on it after the MFA while I was just, I went back to New York. I started teaching again. I was adjuncting at CSI and a couple of other places. And then I kind of tapped out. I was like, this is too much work. For very little money, and I need to write. And so I went to a PhD program, and it was there where I bumped into Jonas Adji, who looked through the story and was basically like, Claire, this is a novel, so during, I had taken a workshop with her, and she had encouraged me to just write. She was like, just write the next 80 pages, bring it in. And that's really how it came to fruition. But I've literally written so many versions of this novel. I've written it backwards, I've written it with less perspectives, more perspectives. And so it really took a lot of practice to figure out how to alternate those different point of views.
What was your publishing journey like? What would you say?
Oh, I started off with a short story collection, and as many people know, usually it's very hard to get those published. And I remember querying agents, and they would be like, "We love these short stories, but do you have a novel?" And I
Hmm.
would be like, I don't really have that." And this was when I had gotten out of the MFA. Um, it actually wasn't until I turned this story into novel that I got representation, um, with Jane Von Marin, who's wonderful. She's an agent at Avitas, and she had really was encouraged and was patient with this project because it took many iterations. It took many drafts for me to get it to where it is right now. And then it was only let's see, oh man, it happened so fast. Actually, last year we we submitted it, and it got picked up within. It's so interesting because writing a novel it takes forever, and then it get it. At least from my experience, it was sold in less than a month, and then it's just like, oh my god, all of this stuff is happening so fast. Um, and so I guess my experience has been that it was very slow and then it was very quick.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So now that you have your novel out there, What Happened to Ruthy Ramirez, you have your story collection, Staten Island Stories. Looking back, if you could tell your younger writing self anything, Claire, what would it be?
Oh, to be kind to yourself, to and to read more. I think I spent a lot of time just like doing foolishness, right? Like just
Hmm.
going out, hanging out with people who, kind of were not the best, a lot of toxicity. And I should have just spent more time reading and writing and just being kind uh, to the person who really doubted herself and didn't have a place. But it's difficult because I think often like not having those experiences would have changed the writer I am today. So maybe all of those things are necessary. I think a lot about how struggle and failure are really important pieces of becoming a writer. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I'm of the view where those things needed to happen to kind of make you the person, and in this case, the writer you are today. For me personally, but also I was just really stubborn, so I probably wouldn't listen to anything.
Oh my god, yes.
That was so me. So, Claire, before we get into your reading life, I want to know if you're working on any other projects, any more stories, maybe another novel. Are you working on anything right now?
Yes, I'm working on a novel, and it's hard. I gave birth less than a year ago, and so I I know it's like, oh, it's a year ago, Claire, but I still am like
No, of course.
baby and working and all of this. But I've been squeezing in writing time, which has been wonderful. I find that like it's interesting when I had more time. I feel like I would just I don't know, waste it. Now that I have less time, I'm like, okay, you got 45 minutes. You got to put down, a page, like get it down. And so I now I'm trying to get these first 100 pages of the novel done. Um, yeah, so that's what I won't say what it's about because I feel like
Yeah,
it'll jinx it.
absolutely. So let's get into your reading life. I mean, I know we're here to talk about Ruthy Ramirez, but I want to know what you're reading. Tell us about the last book or books that you finished reading that you would now recommend.
Oh man, so the last few books I just finished R.F. Kuang's Yellowface. I had the arc and
Hmm.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. It was really clever. I also am reading the debut book of a novel. Well, actually, it's a short story collection. Sorry, I was thinking of Melissa Cosacchino. But Jennifer Maritza Macaulay has a short story collection that just came out, and I'm reading that, and that's really great. Yeah, so those are the two, and I'm also reading Toni Morrison's Playing in the Dark because I teach, and so
Hmm.
I'm teaching that text to my MFA students over here in South Carolina. And man, returning back to that because it was originally like a lecture. I
Yeah,
just keep on thinking, you get so much more. I feel like Morrison is one of those authors you go back to, and it's just like she keeps on feeding you, like you keep on
absolutely.
coming back and taking something else from it. So that has been a pleasure.
Absolutely. I feel that same way about Baldwin as well. I feel when I reread his books, I always take away something new. So Morrison and Baldwin are go-tos for me.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Did you have a favorite childhood book growing up, Claire?
Oh man, I used to read a lot of R.L. Stein growing up.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the 90s, right? So people didn't
Yep.
have computers in their house or smartphones. Like I read a lot, a lot. Oh my God. And I would read fast. And so it was a lot of like horror and like joke books. And then I remember one of my first books. So as a little girl, maybe like in, kindergarten or first grade, was the Cream of Creature. It was like this Cream of Creature in the cafeteria or something like this, and it was about this green blob that eats all the cafeteria ladies and like
Hmm.
and and goes after the kids. And I just remember being obsessed with that book. Like it just I loved the strangeness of it and the humor.
Love it, love it. Are there any authors with books or just books you're looking forward to reading in the year ahead?
Yeah, Melissa Cosacchino she's the one that I mentioned before that has the novel coming out. And I don't have my hands on it yet, but I'm really excited to read it because I'm going to be sitting on a panel with her soon. And she's another Puerto Rican author.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of Puerto Rican writers right now who were published this season. So that's been exciting.
Love it, absolutely. Okay, so in addition to loving books and authors and all that good stuff, we love our booksellers, we love our indie bookstores. So share with our listeners a childhood favorite or your current favorite, your local, or just even a bookstore you've discovered on your travels.
Man, I've lived in so many places from going to school. So there's a few I used to. Well, most recently,
Hmm.
in Nebraska, I went to school at UNL over there in Lincoln, Nebraska, and there was this bookstore called a Novel Idea right outside of the campus. And I would go there often after after class to look at some of the books. There's another one, Whitewell Bookstore, which I really enjoy. And growing up in New York, there was, of course, the famous Strand.
Okay, amazing. Well, Claire, kind of wrapping things up and kind of going back to what happened to Ruthy Ramirez, I really think readers, once they get their hands on a copy, this is a book folks will be talking about for weeks and months and hopefully years because it was a page turner. I think it was just a really great book. But in an ideal world, I know you've done your job as the author, you've written the book, it's out there for us to read and judge. But what are you hoping readers might think or feel after they've turned the last page?
Oh man. I mean, a sense of them feeling seen. This makes me think of I just got a message through my website from this young woman in Staten Island, this young Puerto Rican woman in Staten Island, and she was like, I read the electronic arc, and it was, I feel seen. I haven't felt this way before, and that was just wonderful. And that was a wonderful moment for me. And that's what I crave, because growing up, I did not, as a Puerto Rican teenager, see Puerto Rican books inside of stores. It just didn't happen. And to be that for somebody else is really powerful. At least it was a powerful emotion that I experienced.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I hope readers out there who identify with this family, they feel seen, identify with this community. And for the rest of us, like myself, I hope it gives you a window into the lives of these amazing Ramirez women. And Claire, thank you so much for coming on the show and speaking with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you, Victoria. This was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening, and happy reading.